Hello, and welcome to the fourth segment in the series of video lectures on ChatGPT. In this video lecture, I'm going to focus on how ChatGPT can help us with our research. So I'm going to walk you through one specific example that I'm hoping will be helpful to you. So this is part of a document that I'm currently working on. I'm developing a sample document for my freshman students. And as a topic, I was looking at the importance or the benefits or drawbacks of hybrid courses. I teach most of my classes as blended courses or hybrid courses. So I wanted to know a little bit more about that, and I figured it would be a good topic to use that as a basis for my research. So I started questioning ChatGPT by posing the following prompt. I'm researching data that suggests that hybrid college courses may lead to improved learning outcomes compared to traditional in-person courses. Can you suggest a few relevant research questions to focus the scope of my research? So I have sort of a general topic, but I want to make sure that in my research I'm focusing on specific aspects that I think will be most helpful in developing and revising my courses so they will yield the highest benefit for my students. So ChatGPT's response is, as always, very polite. Certainly, when researching potential benefits of hybrid courses, it's important to frame your research questions in a way that allows for comprehensive investigation. So the first one ChatGPT recommended here: what is the impact of hybrid course design on student learning outcomes compared to traditional in-person courses? It elaborates by saying this question can serve as a broad starting point. I would argue that's a very, very broad starting point. I could potentially use this, but I think it would probably be too vague. So let's look at the second one and see if that's more helpful. How do students' engagement levels differ between hybrid and traditional in-person courses, and how does this impact their learning outcomes? Now that's a more interesting and a much more specific question. So are students more engaged in an in-person course than they would be online, or is it the other way around? I was looking at an article from a journalist who argued that online classes lead to greater student engagement without really providing any kind of evidence to support that. So that seems to be somewhat counterintuitive. So if that's the case, I would like to know, why that is and get some specific data. So this would be a great question to ask or to focus on in going more in depth in my research. Number 3, what role does technology play in hybrid courses, and how does it contribute to improved learning outcomes? Technology in the past has been almost more of a disadvantage in situations where students don't have access to that technology. We've seen that during COVID. So there might be technology that we can use in teaching online that might actually help maximize our students' experience. So it would be interesting to definitely learn more about that. Number 4, do certain subject areas or disciplines benefit more from a hybrid course format than others, and if so, why? So the person who wrote the article I had looked at, I believe, taught English and writing. So I think teaching writing would sort of lend itself more to online learning than perhaps a science course where we need sort of the hands-on experience in an actual lab. That's something that a video or an online lecture might not be able to successfully reproduce. So that would also be an interesting question to ask, perhaps. Number 5, how does student motivation and self-regulated learning impact the success of students in hybrid courses compared to traditional in-person courses? That's a very important question. So if a student is taking a class that meets on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and has constant interaction with the professor, it might be easier to keep up with the workload. In a course that meets only on Mondays and then not again for the rest of the week, students who may not be as motivated or perhaps overwhelmed with other responsibilities are probably more likely to start falling behind in that course because it is not in the forefront of our awareness, and it's kind of easy to forget about online courses. Number 6, what are the key challenges and barriers associated with implementing hybrid courses, and how do they impact their effectiveness? Again, that's kind of broad. I would probably almost ask ChatGPT to list some potential key challenges and barriers for me, and then use those aspects to go into more depth in my research. Number 7, are there demographic or socioeconomic factors that influence the effectiveness of hybrid courses? Again, during COVID, students whose families did not have reliable Wi-Fi and who did not have computers at home were at a disadvantage compared to the students who had all the technology necessary to get their education online. Number 8, how do faculty perceptions and teaching strategies differ when instructing hybrid courses as opposed to traditional in-person courses? Number 9, what are the long-term effects of participating in hybrid courses on students' academic and career trajectories compared to those who take exclusively in-person courses? That's an interesting question. So, are we potentially teaching students skills as part of an online or hybrid course that they might not learn in a traditional in-person face-to-face course? Might that be time management skills or motivational skills? So that's a really important question that I think I might be more interested to learn more about. And number 10, what are the cost implications of implementing hybrid courses? And are these costs justified by the potential benefits? I'm not quite sure where ChatGPT is going with that. Costs in terms of what universities need to invest. It could be that universities have to have platforms like Blackboard or Moodle that accommodate online learning. All right, so ChatGPT continues by saying these research questions should provide you with a solid foundation for investigating the potential advantages. Depending on the available data and resources, you can further refine and focus your research. Absolutely. So again, those are helpful, but I think we need to focus more in detail on specific aspects of any of those. So I asked ChatGPT to suggest scholarly articles for suggestion number 9. And again, because of the iterative prompting, it knows, it remembers what number 9 was, so it can elaborate on that. Now, interesting here, ChatGPT responds, I'm unable to provide direct access to specific scholarly articles since my knowledge is not linked to external databases, and my knowledge cutoff date is September 2021. So in this case, it didn't just make something up. It admitted that it doesn't have access to that information, which is very helpful. However, I can suggest keywords and databases you can use to search for relevant scholarly articles on the long-term effects of participating in hybrid courses. You can then access these articles through academic databases, university libraries, or online research platforms. So it gave me a list of 10 keywords: hybrid courses, blended learning, online learning. By themselves, they're kind of general, but I'm going to come back to those keywords because ChatGPT gave me some additional recommendations at the end of this response. So the databases it identified is, first of all, the Education Resources Information Center, or ERIC, and I actually looked at that, so I'll show you some of the responses and results I got from that. JSTOR is a digital library that I was familiar with, so that's absolutely accurate. ProQuest is another one. We're all familiar with Google Scholar. Google Scholar is more helpful than Google because Google tends to cast a very wide net, whereas Google Scholar will narrow it down to scholarly articles and highly credible information. Psych info, I'm not familiar with that, so I would have to look in the university databases to see if that's an actual database, and how it might be helpful. Academic Search Complete, I'm familiar with. Not familiar with Scopus, but Science Direct is another one. So that's very helpful. So we can start looking at databases to see if there's any information available, any scholarly peer-reviewed article that can provide more insight into a specific aspect of what I'm looking for. So very helpful here at the end. ChatGPT adds, when conducting a search, be sure to use combinations of relevant keywords. So again, as I said a little while ago, the keywords by themselves are probably going to be too broad. So if we use, for example, hybrid courses and the and will be in all caps, post-graduation outcomes, then the combination of those two keywords will probably yield a more meaningful response in the search engine of the databases. So I continued my research with the Education Resources Information Center, or ERIC. So I went to that website, and as a keyword or key phrase that I entered in the search engine, I included hybrid course and academic success. So the results I received here, and there were quite a few, were examining predictive factors for student success in a hybrid learning course, success and retention at community college students in hybrid versus face-to-face anatomy courses. The third one, predicting students' achievement in a hybrid environment through self-regulated learning, log data, and course engagement. That sounded pretty interesting. And preparing students for success in hybrid learning environments with academic resource centers. I was also able to go back to the search engine for the databases at our university and just simply put in key phrases like hybrid courses and post-graduation outcomes, or hybrid courses and student outcomes. The first one, the post-graduation outcome, did not yield a whole lot of resources or helpful material. The hybrid courses and student outcomes was a lot more helpful. So based on the key phrase in that search, I actually got several results from the databases at the university. The first one, comparison of student outcomes and evaluations in hybrid versus face-to-face anatomy and physiology courses. So that's the one I actually looked at. It was in this database research and teaching. Here I looked at the actual abstract to see if this was going to be relevant information. So at this point, I found several sources that provided some level of insight in terms of whether online courses could have equal or perhaps even better educational outcomes for students, particularly long term. But the second area that I was really concerned about, again, as an instructor, I'm much more concerned about the potential drawbacks and the kind of resources I need to provide for my students in order to avoid those pitfalls and to help guide them through this process so that they can achieve the increased level of educational achievement and long-term outcomes. So my next question to ChatGPT therefore was, what are proper support systems and resources instructors should provide to assist students in managing their workload effectively? So that's always a challenge in online learning. I added, please include sources that offer detailed information on these support systems and resources. So let's take a look at what we find. And here are the results I got from ChatGPT. So here are some things that ChatGPT is telling me are absolutely critical in making sure students can succeed. Having a clear syllabus and course schedule, I think that's kind of a given. If we're only meeting once a week, then it is absolutely essential for students to understand what things are being covered online and what will be due at the end of that week. Number two, it's really helpful if the university can offer time management and study skills workshops. Students have to do the work on their own. So since they're not in an environment where others, particularly instructors, can help them, we need to give them the skills to complete their work independently. Number three, office hours and communication channels. Absolutely. I offer 10 hours of office hours a week to my students, and I give them my cell phone number. So if they really ever have an urgent question, they can always reach out to me. That's absolutely important. Online learning platforms and resources. So things like Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, those are basic things in order to provide online learning. Peer support and study groups. I think that's something even in an online or a hybrid course students can do, is they can meet virtually and study together and support one another, so that's always helpful. Number six, assignment checklists and reminders. I do this every Thursday or Friday. I email my students and remind them about the assignments that are due that weekend. I then email them on Sunday to let them know what we're going to cover the following week, and that we meet for class on Monday. Regular feedback and assessment are, of course, in any educational environment, absolutely critical. Number eight, mental health and counseling services referrals. Yes. Flexible assessment policies. Again, if students are struggling with whatever that might be, whether it's a physical or a mental illness or outside responsibilities or family issues, as faculty members, we need to make sure that we are helpful and identifying resources and working with students who are going through a difficult time. And then library and research support. That's something at Towson University we absolutely have. We have very great librarians who are very helpful also in guiding our students through their research projects. So my next question then for ChatGPT was, can you identify online resources for time management and study techniques? So again, what kind of resources can I identify to my students to make their work easier? And I received 12 resources from ChatGPT. The first one is the Pomodoro technique. It's a time management technique that encourages focused work in short intervals followed by short breaks. So focused work, break, focused work, break. Coursera's Learning How to Learn. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm looking at that in more details. Quizlet can help students create and use flashcards, quizzes, and study sets. Also, just remember that ChatGPT can also take your class notes. If you've typed them up, you can paste them into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can create those resources for you as well. Khan Academy offers free educational content in various subjects, resources on study skills, time management, and effective learning techniques, study guides and strategies, mind tools, Tomato Timer, Notion, YouTube educational channels. You're watching this on YouTube, Life Hacker, and TED. So all kinds of really great resources that students can look at and then choose the ones that are most helpful to them. So based on some of the suggestions and recommendations I got from ChatGPT, I went back to the library website at the university, and in the search engine for the databases, I entered time management and study skills. I got some pretty good results. The second one here, studying tips, tricks, and hacks, harness the power of routine, build self-discipline, and develop time management skills. That looked promising. So I looked at the abstract and then pulled up the actual document. It was 6 pages long. I was not able to download it. That exceeded my authority for some reason, but I was able to look at it online and scroll down from page to page, and that was very helpful. So this is definitely something I'm going to share with my students. And then I looked at one of the articles I found in my research. Again, I wanted to know how fully online instruction compares regarding things like grade goal, self-efficacy, test anxiety, and so forth. And comparing the fully in-person modality with the online or hybrid modality, it looks as though students are at least as successful online, if not more so, in terms of grade goal, self-efficacy. Test anxiety is actually lower than it is on campus. The only two areas, and these are the two last ones that concerned me, were peer learning and help seeking. So particularly with help seeking, it's 3.72 for on campus, but only 2.88 online. And I think that makes sense. A student is probably far more likely to ask for help right then and there. When we're online, sort of in the isolation of online learning, a student might be more reluctant to ask for help. And that's a concern, because I think in an online environment, the student needs to be more ready to ask for help. So that's another area I'm going to look at in much greater detail, because I want to make sure that I provide resources to make sure students come to me and ask for help. So my final prompt for ChatGPT, to follow up on the concern of finding resources for my students to help motivate them. So I said, identify online resources for motivating college students in blended courses. And ChatGPT gave me a list of 12 of them. They're right here. I'm not going to read them all back to you. So what I would like to do is just quickly reiterate how ChatGPT can help us in our research. Again, it can help take a highly broad research question. Again, what are the differences between fully in-person courses and blended courses, where we combine online and face-to-face class time? And it began by giving me 10 very helpful ways of narrowing that topic down to a specific aspect of that research question. Again, that's helpful in narrowing down the scope. I'm not writing a book on blended learning. I want to write a short research paper about a specific aspect of hybrid learning that I find very important in order to help my students. So basically, it will not, or it cannot do the research for you. Again, at some point we realized when it admitted that it does not have access to those databases, then obviously that's not an option. But it identified the right databases and provided that guideline for us to go to those databases ourselves, look up the information, and go from there. So again, and I've been saying this all along, ChatGPT cannot do the work for you, but it is simply a very powerful tool to guide you through a process. And again, the more specific we are in asking questions, the more relevant the results will be. I look forward to seeing you in the final segment of our ChatGPT videos.